Anthem of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats and welcome. To just borrow one line from the Trinidad and Tobago's national anthem, which was actually written by Pat Castani for the Federation when he talked about islands of the blue Caribbean or Caribbean Sea. So it's an adaptation and a very good cue for me to follow on from yesterday's opening day at the University of the West Indies, hosted by Professor Clem Sankat and his team at UWI. For those of you who are just joining us today, and there are many, many dignitaries, politicos, diplomatic corps, regional and international institutions, NGOs, academia, private sector, Caribbean citizens, a lot of young people, global shapers and others. We agreed yesterday that the tone for the next 2 days, as was started yesterday, was that all protocols are left on these peripheral doors. All official titles are left at those official doors. No disrespect to our esteemed colleagues here already on the podium and many of you in our midst. Because if we are going to tackle this issue of what's next for the Caribbean, we have to do so in a manner in which there is inclusion, in which there are no silos, in which, as my remit is to continuously remind you and take these 60 seconds to do so, we want to be revolutionary, we want to be radical, we want to be disruptive, we want to challenge and ultimately come out with the kinds of bold actions that take into account that the Caribbean, facing some serious issues and crises, we have to fight our way out, and we can only do so as a region with our neighbors and our friends in the hemisphere and elsewhere. So you will forgive me, Excellencies, in the room and on the table for not going through the long protocol list. And I will remind you all during the day today that this is not about your individual institution or your individual organization, but it is about a coming together of minds and challenging these notions of development that we have in the region, discarding those that we need to, re-embracing those that we have forgotten, and charting new directions for the Caribbean. Without further ado, I'd like us to welcome our first speaker this morning, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Frances Signoret.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. As Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I would just quickly say that the directions given will apply to everyone else. The Honorable Winston Ducran, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and other ministers, the Honorable Clarice Modeste Cohen, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Grenada, His Excellency Alfonso Binera, Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, His Excellency Ewan LaRocque, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, His Excellency Dr. Makisha Kituyu, Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Your Excellencies, heads of mission and other members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very pleasant good morning. It is a distinct pleasure to welcome you to Day 2 of the Forum on the Future of the Caribbean, particularly those of you who have joined us from other parts of the region and beyond, and from our English and French-speaking and Dutch-speaking members of the Caribbean. Your presence here emphasizes your deep interest in and commitment to the sustainable development of the citizens of the Caribbean. Coming from diverse backgrounds, from the public sector, business, civil society, and representatives of different generations, each one of your contributions towards disruptive thinking, bold action, and practical outcomes will therefore be invaluable. It is to be noted that the genesis of this forum emanated from concerns articulated by leaders of the Caribbean community, and these concerns served as the inspiration for the forum and the platform on which it has been developed. The presentations, suggestions, and perspectives which emanated from yesterday's sessions at the University of the West Indies have laid an excellent foundation from which to continue this exercise to map the action required of each one of us towards the collective objective identified by the forum. Yesterday, I was particularly struck by Dr. Antonio Prado's reference that the Caribbean needs a disruptive approach to a disruptive age. And while there were, as expected, diagnoses and prescriptive action that pointed to more work to be done to strengthen the region's capacity in key sectors, there was also the acknowledgement that the Caribbean has been a leader in other areas, building on indigenous strengths to provide a blueprint for others. Professor Rose-Marie Belle-Antoine's strong assertion, therefore, that in the Caribbean we are not always mimic men, also resonated deeply, as did Dr. Matthew Bishop's statement that the Caribbean is the most entrepreneurial region in the world. The foundation for bold action, therefore, exists, and today promises to be as stimulating given the distinguished presenters and panelists with whom we will engage today. Today, we must continue to embrace disruption in whatever form it may take, in whatever form it may be made manifest. It will, however, be remiss of me if I did not, on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, take this opportunity to express our deepest appreciation to all the collaborators on this very important process and project. The partnership has been invaluable and self-sustaining and augurs well for the future collaboration. Such collaborators as the University of the West Indies, the CARICOM Secretariat, the United Nations System, the UN Development Program, in particular with ECLAC, the ILO, the Government of Mexico, the Commonwealth, the Association of Caribbean States, the Organization of American States, and the Development Bank of Latin America. We're also particularly gratified to have the participation of a number of youth and members of civil society. And in this regard, we believe that together with your collective perspectives and approaches, we can chart a sustainable future. Thank you.
Moving the wagon very quickly along, because I have to tell you, Ambassador Larocque, there was a very exciting presentation and discussion that ensued on CARICOM and the future of CARICOM yesterday. So let's invite Ambassador Larocque, who is the sitting Secretary General of the Caribbean Community CARICOM, to share some of his thoughts with us.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And I've heard your request when you started this discussion, but you will forgive me. There are a few people which I just have to recognize in our audience, and I must recognize the Honorable Winston Dukaran, who was the prime mover and shaker behind this three-day event, and I just simply have to recognize Minister Dukaran. Frances Signore, of course, who was in the engine room in getting things organized, along with Mr. Richard Blewett of UNDP. I know they were the ones getting everything done. And of course, I must recognize Hillary and Secretary General Munira, and to all colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure for me personally, as well as all of my colleagues at the CARICOM Secretariat, to be associated with this one-of-a-kind event. This forum on the future of the Caribbean could not be more timely and relevant, given the challenging regional and international circumstances. I am particularly heartened by the range of participants involved during these 3 days. I look forward to the practical outcomes and policy directions to be derived from this exercise in disruptive thinking, which I am sure will stimulate ideas and debate. This forum owes its genesis to the vision of the Honorable Winston Dukaran, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Trinidad and Tobago, himself a disruptive thinker. Minister, this demonstrates your commitment to the development of our region. I trust that we will all be satisfied at the end of these proceedings tomorrow that this event would have achieved the desired results. Thank you, Minister. There is no doubt that serious foresighting and visioning need to be undertaken about the future of our region. In so doing, we must be prepared to open our minds to new ideas and to thinking differently, allowing ourselves to be shaken out of our conventional thinking modes and approaches is an essential prerequisite in our quest for the future development of the region. To prompt such thinking, there can be no better partner than the University of the West Indies. The history of UWI's involvement in regional integration and development allow this forum to benefit from its unique perspective. It is within those walls in the 1960s and 70s that the revived integration movement received its intellectual foundation. It was from there as well that ideas were discussed on the model of economic integration for our region as we struggled at a critical juncture of our search for unity. And now today, at another moment of decision on the future of our region, UWI is again playing its part. Ours is a community that has always had an eye on the future. Caribbean integration has never been static. Transition from free trade through CARIFTA to a common market, to a single market, and eventually onto a single economy gives evidence of that fact. In truth, the depth and width of our integration has always gone beyond economics. The human and social dimension preceded economics and trade and remains a most vigorous element in the integration of our community. That integration also is now grounded in foreign policy coordination and security cooperation. And now again, we are engaged in a reform process to ensure that the community is well prepared for the future. But what is that future? This forum is most timely in attempting to give us different perspectives from a variety of stakeholders as to what that future holds. On the part of the community, recognizing that form follows function, we have prepared a community strategic plan for the period 2015 to 2019. This is the first of its kind and involved consultations in member states with a wide cross-section of stakeholders, including the political opposition, the private sector, labor, youth, and civil society generally. The question is, what kind of institutional arrangements do we need to carry us forward?